The next formed element are leukocytes. And leukocytes are white blood cells. Now, white blood cells are different from red blood cells in that they are full cells. They have nuclei, they have organelles, they have everything inside of them. One similarity, though, to red blood cells is that leukocytes originate in the bone marrow from the hematopoietic stem cell. So that stem cell is the precursor for all blood cells, not just red blood cells, not just white blood cells, not just platelets, all of them. So again, they are complete cells. So they have a nucleus, they have organelles, they are complete cells. So if we look at how they kind of act, because here's the thing I want you to understand about white blood cells. White blood cells are part of the immune system. That means much of their job is to go out and clean things up and to kill things and to eat things and, deal with nasties that get into our bodies. So quite frankly, we really don't want these cells to divide, okay? Because they're getting into all kinds of nastiness, right? So they are not going to divide to increase their numbers. They come from hematopoietic stem cells from the bone marrow, so they're always made. But if we look at the skin, for instance, so this is the top layer of the skin. Here's that top layer. I think you know that this would be the epidermis. So down here, let's go ahead and put it in blue, would be the dermis. Because we know that the epidermis and the dermis are two different tissue types. The epidermis is stratified squamous epithelia, and the dermis is connective tissue. So basically dense regular connective tissue with a top layer of areolar. Hopefully you remember that from the skin chapter. So if we have some kind of, injury there, okay, so, we've got some bleeding going on, nastiness like that. So within the epidermis, this injury is going to stimulate some chemical activity, okay? And this chemical activity, this area is going to secrete some chemicals that are going to signal white blood cells. So these are chemicals secreted by injured cells to basically put up the white flag, to basically signal, oh my gosh, we're hurt over here, we need some help. Okay, so if we've got a blood supply down here, we've got some capillaries. And those capillaries, of course, are going to be filled with red blood cells because that's where they are. And that's what plasma is mostly made out of, as far as formed elements. But these chemicals are going to start to signal white blood cells. So these white blood cells, which are full cells, they have different kind of looks to them, but these cells are going to be attracted to these chemicals. And that attraction to that area is called chemotaxis. it's basically like leaving breadcrumbs for the white blood cells to follow to that injured area, because that's where they're going to find bacterias and things like that that came in when the injury happened. So they need to get that cleaned up. So the white blood cell then is going to come up to the edge of the blood vessel, and it's going to kind of stick to it here. And if you remember, blood vessels, capillaries, the walls of capillaries are made up of simple squamous epithelium. If you remember that, we called that was called endothelium. And these chemicals start this inflammatory process, because we know that when an injury happens, inflammation sets the stage. That's the first thing that happens. So these chemicals that start inflammation leave the little breadcrumb trail for white blood cells to get there, and they also cause these squamous cells to kind of separate, okay? So they get leaky. So these white blood cells come up here and kind of stick to the wall of the vessel and then sort of ooze out of it. Use the blue color. So ooze out into the interstitial space. And then they're able to sort of crawl over to the injured area. And then they can do their job and clean things up. That is called diapedesis. All right, there are two types of white blood cells. The first type are called granulocytes. And these are white blood cells that have granules in their cytoplasm. And those granules can do some things. They can do different things. They can cause fever. They can cause inflammation. They can cause the release of histamines. They can cause different things. Okay, these granulocytes can. And then the other type of white blood cell is the agranulocyte. So the agranulocyte, if you think A, that means nada, zero. So 0 granules. So these guys are not, or do not have granules in the cytoplasm. All right, so I have loaded on Blackboard a list that you can print out of the different white blood cells. And it shows their name, it shows the abundance of them within the blood system, their function, their lifespan, how they look, and other information specific to each one of those. So please look at that. It shows you all 5 types of white blood cells, and they are in order of how many there would be in the blood. Now, if a white blood cell's name ends in -phil, so neutrophil, basophil, eosinophil, that means it is filled with granules. So those are granulocytes. If the name does not end in -phil, it is an agranulocyte. So a monocyte or a lymphocyte, those are not granulocytes. Neutrophils, basophils, and eosinophils are granulocytes. And that's how you know the difference, because Granulocytes are filled with granules. Okay, so the next video, we're going to start talking about platelets and start the process of talking about the process of hemostasis.